Disclaimer. This podcast features a conversation between two individuals regarding assistive technology. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed during this episode belong solely to the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of their respective employers. Furthermore, this discussion is for informational purposes only.
Hi, welcome to Assistive Tech Today podcast. I'm your host, Vinny Lavodi, and today we have a special guest, a friend of the podcast, Chrys Johnson, aka the NoLimitSquad on YouTube. And I also gave him a new nickname. I call him Dr. Isometrics because he is a very authoritative person that I know that knows a lot about isometrics, which is going to be a big topic of today's discussion. So without further ado, Chrys, welcome to the podcast, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Yep. So I've been following Chrys on YouTube for many years, and he's a personal trainer. He's been doing it for about 10 years, and he covers a lot about isometric exercises for rehabilitation and for strength training to limit or prevent injuries. So I thought Chrys would be a good person to have on the podcast because it's very important. And also Chrys has a lot of older clients, and even though we're assistive tech, but when people get older, I help with seniors and the aging population. So mobility is so important to keep your strength. And for people with cerebral palsy or Parkinson's disease, they can benefit from using some isometrics to safely train and help keep some muscle strength and muscle conditioning without dealing with joint injuries. And also, Chrys is a author now. He has a brand new ebook called Isometric Mastery. I suggest you check it out, and we will put links to everything in the show notes. But I'm going to stop talking, Chrys. I'm going to turn the floor over to you and basically tell our audience, what you do and what's your specialty and how you help train people.
Okay. So my name is Chrys Johnson. I've been working out since 2009, so about 17 years. I've been a personal trainer for 10 of those 17. And I ran into isometrics in 2020 during lockdown. A company called Dragon Door that Vinny and I are both familiar with came out with an article on a fitness product called the Iso Chain, which caught my attention. And there was also a book that went along with that called Paul Wade's Isometric Mastery, Isometrics Manual, which I have here. It's a little beat up and kind of blurry, but it definitely looks like it's been read because I've read it a lot, and I still refer to the manual, as you should, a manual, very frequently. And it really got me excited because at the time when I ran into that company and the book, and I got the PDF and everything, I was understanding a lot about the aches and pains I was running into. And I know some might laugh, like, aches and pains at 30. I'm 36 years old as of this recording, by the way. But I had a couple of injuries, some of which could have been either completely prevented or drastically reduced had I been incorporating isometrics. One was this lightning bolt of a pain in my left knee, which is a very small quadriceps tendon tear, very small. So, I mean, it's still very functional, but if I don't watch it, it can come back. And within 5 months of using isometrics seriously in my program, this was October of 2020. So right around like spring of 2021, it was gone, completely gone. And it just kind of spoke volumes, because it's one thing to understand the exercise science, but when your body like actually feels what you learned, and it's in action. It's like, oh wow, I don't have the pain anymore. That really wakes you up. So it's more of along the lines of, okay, now what else can I use this for? It could be used as a standalone, but as far as like the aches and pains, it is very good.
I just want to point out too, Chrys, I know you said, the pains and stuff are gone. We're just going to clarify for everybody that isometrics is not going to heal a tear if a tear is there. It's just going to rehab you, which, like many other injuries, you go to physical therapy, they don't always need surgery. So this is rehab. And, we always tell people to consult your physician or your therapist before doing any exercise program. So. Yeah, I just let me jump in a little bit just with my exposure to isometrics. When I was a kid, my older brother my dad bought him a bull worker, which has been around for over 50 years, and Chrys has used the bull worker. I have them, they're great. We didn't know what it was. My friends and I were just trying to compress this thing. The spring was like 100 pounds, and we had no clue. When I started weightlifting in my early 20s, I sustained some injuries because my lifting partner was much bigger than I was, and he was always pushing me. And I've sustained some injuries in my shoulders, my back. And just like you, Chrys, had I known about isometrics, I didn't know what I had in my hands back then. And I had it incorporated. I may have not gotten injured or may have reduced the injury, but I have used some of the Bullworker products to rehab some injuries to allow me to keep exercising and working out. And it is amazing. So I just wanted to jump in on that, but I'm going to go back to you, Chrys, because let you finish what you were saying.
Sure. And I love to hear those stories. And it's one of the many stories that I see in the comment section on our channel, No Limit Squad. I'll get people from all age ranges, even the teens that haven't experienced too much yet. They'll talk about how they've incorporated it and they've noticed a difference. But it was like Minnie said, it's not like some magical cure-all, but it certainly helps in a bulletproofing process. Because your muscles are under tension without any load. So it makes it really friendly for beginners or individuals that want to rehab and they're scared of just like the aches and pains and dynamic work. And dynamic, by the way, is just like moving, and static is feeling the tension without any movement. It's easier barrier to entry using isometrics to kind of work around that, or as a beginner, because you just feel the tension and you need tension to grow the muscle. So whether it's static or dynamic, as long as you get the tension at the right load, it's great.
Time under tension, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
But so, Chrys, just for our viewers who aren't familiar with isometrics, with you saying that because you're not using like a barbell with weight, you're basically just putting there's basically two types of isometrics. There's yielding isometrics and overcoming. So can you just give us like a brief, simplified description of both, and then basically like what kind of tools or how you would do it, whether it's in a squat rack or if it's straps or something like the Dragon Dorn, people could do with things that they have already in their house or your own body.
Sure. So I'm going to cover the easiest one first that most people know about, which is called yielding isometrics. So when we think of yielding isometrics, those are your wall sits, planks, holding a push-up position. Those lack of movement. Those exercises are just where you hold a position and over time you start to feel a burn. But that's still the tension, the time under tension, as we talked about. And so now the goal here is to try and hold it for longer. So if, for example, we could only hold a plank for 20 seconds, the next time you want to try a plank, try and hold for 25. And that's how you progressively get better. You strengthen up the core. For push-up holds, it would be the chest, shoulders, and triceps. For the wall sits are really, really good for your knees. If you have any like achy joints in the knees, wall sits are great. So essentially, like yielding isometrics you are resisting gravity for as long as you can before your muscles finally say, I have had enough, and you lose form and you do the hold anymore. Overcoming isometrics is the less talked about form of isometrics, and so that is pushing or pulling against an immovable object. So if you want to think about that as like, let's say we are in a doorway and we are trying to push the door frame, but obviously the door frame is a solid structure and you can't move it, but you're pushing as if you could. You are utilizing 100% of your body's force, and that is also tension, and tension is what's required to grow. So this is what's called MVC, maximal voluntary contraction. It is a really great stimulus for your nervous system. It's a really great stimulus for strength. There are many setups. You can do door frame isometrics. So I have a video on. You can use it with a towel. You can use it in a squat or power rack, where you set the pin in a position where you can't move. So either you can load it with a whole bunch of weight that you'll never be able to move, or if your power rack has the a pin where you slide the barbell in and it just can't move, and now you apply maximal force for whatever exercise you want to do, a shoulder press, bench press, squat, and ease into that that contraction for roughly about 6 to 10 seconds, taking about a 20-second rest in between. You will have, it'll be tough. It'll be tough, but the risk of injury is significantly reduced because of the lack of movement. So you get all the tension to the muscle without that much risk to the body.
The just a note for anybody who knows who this gentleman is, and Chrys talks a lot about on his channel, the martial arts master Bruce Lee incorporated a lot of isometrics in training. He was one of the OGs with before the Dragon Door came out, he made his own isometric chain and he used it in the squat rack. But other things too, Chrys, that with the, you don't have to go full bore. You don't have to go 100%. You can ramp up. If you want to sustain a longer hold, you can go with less force. And basically, isn't the isometric, when you're doing this, or I want to know, like, what does this really strengthen the muscles, or is it primarily tendons and ligaments? Because we need, we have that's different parts of the body's connective tissue. You're actually just creating a better mind-muscle connection to inhibit the restriction. Like, you're basically recruiting more muscle fibers. Maybe you could explain it better. I know, like an example, people always say, like, a kid, something falls on their kid and they get excited and the adrenaline kicks in and they're able to lift, like, say like a car or something that they wouldn't do. That's like almost like the inhibition is there. Your body can do more, that you have like a safety mechanism so you don't get hurt. Maybe you can explain it better.
Sure. So I always love that story. So that is a little bit different. That's called hysterical strength, where we're just removing all the limiters. So a little akin to like adrenaline, and that's not strength that you can normally tap into. But with this, we're utilizing what we're reducing what's called cortical inhibition. So that is your body's putting limits on you so that you don't get hurt. And this is up to a certain extent. Like, so think of it as like this range, and then hysterical strength is a range above that you can't train for that. Right. So with cortical inhibition, what we're doing here is we are teaching our body to access more muscle fibers. So how that happens is through a process from, it's called Hebb's rule, which states that muscle fibers that fire together. So if you continually train your body in this way, you will be able to recruit more muscle fibers than someone who wouldn't. So for example, if you had two people in exactly the same position, but one trained this way and one didn't, they're both, I'm just making this up, 5'8", 170 pounds. But the person A trained this way and the other person didn't. Person A is going to be stronger because they can just access more of what they have.
Yeah, right.
Versus person B. So this is where you get, I'm not saying that this influencer trains this way, but this is where you get situations like Anatoly, the guy that goes around with the
Yeah.
mop on YouTube, that just does
Insane stuff. Right.
insane stuff, and he is shredded, and he doesn't look like he can, but he's able to recruit more muscle fibers than the average person that weighs as much as him. So I think I missed some part of your question though. So I tend to go on tangents.
Yeah, no. I think you explained it. I was just trying to tell them, what the muscles like with isometrics. You're training more of the tendons and ligaments, right? The connecting tissue.
Yes. So you're also getting you're training your muscle fibers, but you're also getting tendons and ligaments to be stronger. So it takes a lot longer for the tendons and ligaments to become stronger in weight training, whether it's calisthenics, whether it's
free weights.
So your muscles are going to come along for the ride first, and then it's usually taking months for the tendons and ligaments and connective tissue to catch up. So usually when you see, and this is not always the case, but when we see people that tear pecs that are on some type of steroidal use, it's because the muscle growth severely outgrew what their connective tissues could handle, and
there's an imbalance there.
Yep,
and something's going to give.
Something's going to give,
and usually of least resistance, and that's usually, like you said, a tear. But no, that's good. I just wanted to say that. So, I mean, obviously, if you people want to learn a lot more about isometrics, we wouldn't have enough time to cover it today. Definitely check out Chrys's channel, NoLimitSquad, on YouTube. Chrys has a wealth of information. He breaks it down very scientifically, and if you're really interested in learning more, go to his channel. You'll learn a lot. I did. The other thing too, so we basically covered what isometrics is, two different forms, and how it's utilized. So because we're dealing with assistive tech and people, like I said, either they're seniors, and there's people that may have some type of physical disability like cerebral palsy or Parkinson's. With your training experience, and you said you have a lot of some older clients, you find when you put them through training, you incorporate a lot of isometrics so that prevent it, obviously, because as you get older, the elasticity of our tendons and ligaments are not like they were when we were in our 20s. We all wish they were. But so basically explain how you would utilize that, as far as training an older client to maybe somebody that's never trained, or they haven't trained in 10, 15 years and they want to get back in shape safely.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I have two really, really good examples. I actually just finished training him about 2 hours ago. So he is 79. I ran into him 10 years ago when he was 69 years old. We actually ran into each other because he was involved in a motorcycle accident. He was very, very fortunate to recover. And he tore his left rotator cuff completely, and he's very limited on his right rotator cuff. So when we curl, and it's been 10 years to this day, his right bicep curl comes up, but the left one is really tough. We cannot do any lateral raises whatsoever, regardless of the type of training. But what we have been able to do that was limited before we started training isometrics was his overhead press. Overhead presses were an absolute no-go. And so what we did was we started to incorporate what we talked about earlier with the overcoming isometrics, where we set up a overcoming isometric shoulder press. And at first, so we used a device called the IsoChain at the time, and you can see the force readout and poundage was roughly around 20 to 25 pounds. And over the course of about 90 to 120 days, it got up to about 80 to 85 pounds. Wow. Nowadays, he's pushing about 100 pounds of force overhead. So that was the way to get around it. We were able to strengthen up his shoulders without the risk of re-injury with that not usually comes with dynamic movement, but it's a greater chance with dynamic training.
And is it also because you have a physical load, with the IsoMax, for people who don't know what it is, or the IsoChain, there's no physical weight there. You're basically pushing against a chain or strap, and it's got a digital device that measures how much, so you can see if you're progressing. Whereas if he had a 100-pound bar, it's not the same as if you gave him a 100-pound barbell. He doesn't have that risk of having that weight on him all the time. If he decides it hurts, he could just let go. There's no danger where you can't just let go of a 100-pound barbell unless you want it to drop on your head or your foot.
Yep. So he's been doing very well with that. We also have a pure isometric day. So that usually is every Wednesday, where we go through anywhere between 6 to 10-second holds. So we can just really focus on, sure, raw strength, but also the connective tissues we talked about. It tends to get cranky the older we get. So we want to make sure that we're keeping him strong in those areas, which is great because it actually translates really, really well to his other days where we're doing a lot of dynamic movement. He's gotten many, many compliments over the years, like, wow, you're really strong. And he'll tell me this stuff. I'll see it. We'll be in a session in the gym, and we'll get younger guys that, hey, sir, do you need me to lighten this weight? Oh, no, thanks. It's a great prideful moment for both of us.
Right.
But a lot of that comes from incorporating isometrics into his program, where we're also doing dynamics. So he does cardio as well. So it's really good. Another client that I have, so I train her remotely through Zoom like this. So she is in Minnesota. So we have been training for about 4 years roughly. She has her own isometrics, but we don't just do that. We also do yielding isometrics. So we'll do a lot of glute bridge holds where we're holding for time, and then we just increase that time over the course of sessions. We have held planks 6 inches. Wall sits have been really, really good for her. Her doctor that she sees has told her, like, hey, whatever you and your trainer or whatever are doing with these isometric things, keep doing
it. Right.
Keep doing that, because they've noticed a difference from doctor visit to doctor visit. So.
Right. I mean, we're not medical doctors or physical therapists, but I've also read and heard that if you do it consistently, it will actually help lower your blood pressure naturally. But one key thing Chrys and I were talking about before we got on camera is that I was looking up some research for using isometrics for people with cerebral palsy and for Parkinson, and it says, oh, it might not be a good thing to do because when you hold your breath, you could, cause problem with your blood pressure. And it's like, that's a no-no, right? You don't hold your breath when you're doing these moves. You got to keep breathing.
Yeah.
Breathing is important if you want to stay alive.
Yes, very important.
Especially while exercising and exerting force. So we're definitely not supposed to stop that. So I kind of laughed, but I mean, this is AI. So, you got to take that with a grain of salt, no pun intended, but you just, that's why you go to professionals. And again, you talk to your physical therapist, you talk to your personal trainer, and again, can't stress this enough. And I know Chrys will say, before starting any strength training regimen, you always want to get it cleared by your physician to make sure you're able to do, and if you have limitations, just to be safe. We always got to be safe, guys.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So, you covered the two people, but just from your experience, like you said, if somebody was training and they were just doing dynamic, even whether it's body weight training or whatever, it's definitely a more rounded program by incorporating isometrics to basically even out. And I'm assuming you also have some people that maybe, again, mostly more for the people that would maybe benefit from it. The population that I serve is people with severe disabilities, where they probably would have trouble. Like somebody with pretty bad CP would probably not be able to do dynamic movement so easy, but doing an isometric hold might not be so hard for them. And they don't have to do 100%, because any training is going to be better than no training. So do you have anybody that are pretty injured that they really can only tolerate isometrics alone or very limited dynamic?
No, at this
Mhm.
time, no. The closest to that would have been past tense. My client I mentioned with the shoulder
Mhm.
press, who's 79.
Right. When he first started out, he couldn't basically do anything.
Right.
Yeah. So, any other, important information, about isometric training or just training in general that would probably be beneficial, especially, like I said, because we're dealing with with assistive tech, we also deal with the aging population to keep mobility. Do you find that isometrics help keeping their mobility? Because it would, to me, I'm not a therapist, but um, you're engaging a lot of stabilizer muscles with isometrics and that's one thing. The biggest thing we see is people, they fall because they don't
Yeah.
have good stability. They lose their footing. They have weak cores. So with isometrics, over dynamic, would you say that's a very important thing, especially as somebody gets older, to keep for their mobility and stability?
Yes. To start, it would be really good to incorporate yielding, probably more yielding isometrics than anything, to get that time and attention and that stability. And then over time, I would start to incorporate some dynamic, but starting from scratch and trying to build that up, isometric.
Right.
Isometric. That's
And
amazing.
when you're saying yielding, you and I know, but like, are you talking about like doing like the wall sits and things like that to
Yes,
build up
the
the
wall sits,
stability,
plank.
planks,
Yep. Hmm.
um, even you were doing some different, almost like isometric squats, like knee, single leg, and obviously you could do it with a chair if you need assistance for the
Yes.
stability part.
Yep. I have
And
a video on that with just chair isometrics out in the
right,
yard.
right. And this, Chris, we were talking about all the different, there's a lot of cool equipment out there to quantify so
Mhm.
you can see with progression, like I went back to Bruce Lee, he was the OG. He had like the first ISO chain. He basically had a steel bar with literally a chain that he got at the hardware store with a 2x4 or a 2x6, and he was pulling up on it. Now, Bruce Lee was a trained athlete, so he could tell if he was getting stronger. But the average person, I mean, the Dragon Door, the unit has a digital meter on it, so you can quantify. You have a timer on it, so you can see how long. It'll actually tell you how long till you make. I'm holding for 10 seconds. It'll beep. There's a lot of cool stuff, but they can do this with just things around the house. Just your own body. You can pull against yourself for certain moves, or like I know Bullworker has like the ISO bow, which is good for some rehab and single joint exercises. I know there's World Fit has isometric straps that are just basically almost like toe straps or suspension trainer straps that they will give a little bit so they can do things. And obviously the Dragon Dorn, and you said you could use a towel, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is again, guys, definitely check out Chris's channel because everything we're talking about, you'll find on Chris's channel in depth, and he goes over everything.
So
That's
many
why I call him
videos.
Dr. Isometrics because out of anybody that I know that I've been watching on YouTube for all these years, Chris really breaks it down scientifically. He gets very in depth with it. And, before we wind this up, one fun fact is a lot of the strongmen back in the old days, they practice isometrics to do some of these crazy feats that they can perform, like bending bars and breaking chains and all that kind of stuff. I know Eric Moss, he's a modern day strongman. He's also on YouTube. He does regular training, but he does do a lot of isometrics for some of the feats that he does. But anything you
Mhm.
want to touch on that, Chris? I know
Um,
you talked about Alexander Zass and a lot of other famous people.
Zass, yeah, you had mentioned self-resistance. So Charles Atlas is another influential figure in that realm. But usually when we like huge isometric guys, I mean, we're definitely going to talk about Alexander Zass, who broke out of his own prison cell by just pulling the bars. It's still insane to me. Bruce Lee, who you incorporated isometrics as part, like it was part of his entire routine. But that's one of the main reasons why, even though he was 135 pounds, his power to weight ratio was just so insane. He was still
Insane.
launching people across the room. You just don't see that because people don't train like that.
No.
And then you'll have Dennis Rogers, who is a little bit more modern in that sense, but he uses isometrics and he's able to literally bend steel. Plenty of videos of him doing that. And there's definitely more. It's actually a pretty big list of people, of which I have a playlist covering a lot of them. But
it's all good information. And yeah, I mean, Bruce Lee was, I loved watching him as a kid, on the TV series, Kato and the Green Hornet, and all his movies. He was definitely ahead of his time with his training philosophy. And there's video on YouTube you can see when he's like using that giant, it's not even a punching bag, it's like a kick bag. They showed him like breaking it off the mount because he was able to throw such a massive amount of force. And like you said, he's a little guy. He's only like 135 pounds, maybe 145 when he was bulking up for some of the movies, but he still was a small man to be able to generate that kind of force. And people said his muscles were like stone because he did so much isometric. I'm assuming it's from his isometric training. I never got to meet the man, but we're just speculating, but no, I mean, it's all great stuff to talk about, and it's really interesting. But yeah, I mean, and Chris, so other than I know we can find you on YouTube, and your new book, it's an ebook on your website. Isometric Mastery covers like basic isometrics, right? And you're also any other social media that they can find you on if they want to follow you.
Yeah. So I have an Instagram. It's No Limit Chrys. Chrys spelled Chrys. Also have a TikTok, NoLimitSquad 89, where you could find a lot of the that device that Vinny and I were talking about throughout this podcast. You can see that. And also have a fitness page on Facebook, also called No Limit Fitness.
Well, and the guys, as always, we always put all the information of our guests in the show notes so you don't have to write it down and remember it. We'll put it in there for you. And Chrys, before we wrap this up, is there anything you wanted to end with? Any closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
Yep. So I'm sure that interest has been peaked with some of what we're talking about. What I would recommend if anyone wanted to start incorporating these is to ease into it and start with something light. I have recommended this so many times on the channel. The amount of time, the time and attention I'm about to explain might seem so small. You might question me like, really? Is that really all I want to hold it for? And the answer is yes. But to simply try and hold a plank for like 5 to 10 seconds or whatever your fitness level is and write it down. And then simply try and beat it by a small amount. If you're able to hold it for 5 seconds and the next day you do it for 7 seconds, that is huge. You will eventually work your way up to a minute, but it just takes time. But just start with the stupidly simple, small stuff. And over time, you'll be surprised at what you're capable of. No matter what your fitness level is right now, just start small and just build on top of that over time.
You know what I always say, Chrys? Slow and steady wins the race.
That's right.
And
that's right.
Just, you can get hurt doing isometrics if you're not careful, like you said, and you go overboard. And I could just tell you from my own personal experience when I started doing it, like I followed what Chrys was saying, you'd be amazed at how quickly your body will adapt. And I'm not in my 30s anymore, but your body really does adapt very quickly to isometrics. So it's, take your time, like Chrys said, slow and steady wins the race. You'll be amazed at what you can achieve. So Chrys, anything else? Because I think we're pretty much almost out of time. I just before we wrap it up.
That would be my main message. Take your time and you'll be surprised what you're capable of.
And if you need training, you can always reach out to Chrys and Chrys will train you the right way. So guys, it's been great to have Chrys from NoLimitSquad on the channel today. We appreciate his time and all his wisdom and knowledge that he shared with us all. So again, like I always say, guys, there's another one in the books. I've been your host, Vinny Lavodi. And again, our gracious guest, Chrys Johnson, No Limit Squad. We'll see you guys all on the next podcast. Take care, everyone. Chrys, take care, buddy.
You too. Take care.